Militarily Speaking, episode 54, Vector Force Development.
This episode, we talk with John Hotek, Vice President with Vector Force Development.
Welcome to Militarily Speaking, brought to you by Armed Forces Bank. This is Tom McLean and Jodi Vickery. I'm the Regional Military Executive for Armed Forces Bank, and Jodi is the Executive Vice President, Director of Military Consumer Lending. This is the day after the solar eclipse. We're still here.
We are. Everything's fine. I looked at it. I can still see.
Did I tell you my family went to Austin, Texas? They flew there just for a solar eclipse, and that's like, 4 minutes? Right?
Yes. I'd like to see actually, I don't want to see how much they spent on plane tickets for 4 minutes of darkness.
And
you could have just took them outside at night and said, okay, there was.
The sun sets and this is what happens.
Yeah. All right. Darkness. But yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Do we have any more? Do you have anything to say, John, about the solar eclipse? You're fine, right?
Oh yeah, we're good. You know, we survived. My wife and I celebrated on our front porch with our nice little solar eclipse glasses. 2 glasses of champagne and a charcuterie board. So if you're going to watch the eclipse, you might as well do it in style.
What a great event. Yeah.
That sounds fancy. Yeah. I stopped working, went down the hall and looked out a window and said, okay, great. Went back to work.
Right.
Well, again, welcome to our show. We're excited to have our audience listening and learning about our guest, John Hotek with Vector Force Development.
We are going to split up the introduction because, again, we're going to talk a little bit about Vector Force. So I'm going to tell the story about that. And then Jodi's going to introduce you, John, to our audience. So I will take it away from here. The Vector family of businesses was founded in 2016 by our CEO, Josh Beeler, a graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy. Josh served several years on active duty in the Air Force before transitioning to the Air Force Reserve and pursuing a civilian career. Vector was founded as a service-disabled veteran-owned business, SDVOB, which is one of the main reasons why we have John joining us today. We're excited about that.
Love that.
With the initial purpose of providing meaningful career opportunities in the energy and utilities industries for our nation's veterans. Since its founding, Vector has grown to well over 1,000 employees operating in roughly 23 states and is now recognized as the most diversified ancillary construction service provider in North America. Kudos to you, John. In 2021, 2022, 2023, Inc. magazine recognized Vector as one of America's fastest growing privately held companies. Vector was also recognized in 22 through 24 on the VET 100 listing published by Syracuse University and the Institute for Veterans and Military Families that recognized the top 100 fastest growing veteran-owned businesses in the United States. John, you may not know this, but we recently had a podcast recording with IVMF. So,
not too long ago.
Coming soon to a theater near you. Finally, we were recognized. I always say we. I feel like I'm part of the Vector family.
You've kind of just
part of the Vector family. We're everywhere.
Tom just likes to invite himself to things, so he is now part of your workforce.
I will expect a T-shirt from Vector.
I got plenty of swag I can send your way.
Yeah, even like a name tag.
Finally, we were recognized in 2021 through 23 by the U.S. Department of Labor and awarded the Hire Vets Platinum Medallion Award for our efforts to recruit, employ, and retain veterans in our workforce. As of 1 April 2024, just about 8 days ago, Vector's senior leadership team is comprised of 62% veterans with an overall veteran workforce of roughly 12%. Those are huge numbers. We may talk about this later, but about 80%, John, of our workforce at Armed Forces Bank has a military connection. So we are of like mind and body. So we're on the same mission.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'd like to share a little bit with our audience about you personally as our guest. So bear with me. This is hopefully all stuff that you are well aware of, John. If there's any surprises, that could be entertaining, I suppose.
Because some of it's made up by me. So, yeah.
Yeah. So your job is to find what I made up. John Hotek focuses on the delivery of sustainable human capital solutions and organizational development initiatives for the Vector family of businesses, while managing the daily operations of Vector Talent Solutions and Vector's veteran outreach and military recruitment initiatives. A former U.S. Army officer, John joined Vector after 24 years of service to the nation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, his military background focused on organizational development, talent management, and the development of strategic partnerships across both the conventional Army and Special Operations Forces. As a service-disabled veteran, John brings a unique perspective to Vector's recruiting and staffing efforts and is rightly postured to lead Vector's strategic outreach efforts focused on the unemployed and underemployed segments of our nation's veteran community. John holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from John Carroll University and a master's degree in Organizational Development from Duquesne University.
Well done.
Nailed it. It's not Duquesne.
Not Duquesne. I get it all the time.
Nailed it. Duquesne. Yeah. So welcome, John. It is you probably don't do it all the time, but I appreciate you
French
saying
origin.
that.
Yeah.
Yes. It is an honor to have you on our show. Thank you again for your service to our country. We're grateful to have you here with us.
Hey, no worries. Pleasure to be here.
Before we get into some of these awesome questions that we're about to throw your way, I do want to talk a little bit about your military career too, because that probably defined you in a lot of different ways.
Sure.
So Jodi referenced your 24-year career. And again, thank you for your service with the Army as part of the introduction just a few minutes ago. Tell our audience where you've been stationed and what your military life was like.
Pick a country, pick a continent. We were blessed with multiple continents, multiple countries over 24 years, but started at what used to be Fort Eustis, Virginia, then to Fort Moore. It used to be Fort Benning, Georgia. From there, was stationed at Fort Leavenworth here in Kansas.
Yes.
Then went back to now what is called Fort Myers-Gregg. Used to be, oh Lord, I can't keep them all straight now. Fort
It's so hard.
We'll just leave it at that. It used to be Fort Lee. So from there, I ended up going to Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Which is now Fort Liberty now.
Now Fort Liberty, correct.
Yep.
It will always be Fort Bragg to me. I'm sorry. It is seared in my soul. But it's a wonderful place to work. So then from Fort Bragg, I ended up coming back here to Fort Leavenworth to go to school. And then back to Fort Myers-Gregg again for a few years to work at the schoolhouse. Germany for 3.5 years, followed by Italy for another 2.5 years. And then at that point, made the decision to retire to come back here to Kansas City and terminate my time. And in all of that, 9 combat deployments, 2 operational deployments, a lot of time away from home and family, but I don't regret a minute of it, except for the time away from family.
Yeah, that's the tough part.
I know.
Well, one of the tough parts, but that is a tough part for sure. Where were you at in Germany?
I was in Kessler. So just outside of Ramstein Air Force Base. Most people are familiar with the K-Town or Ramstein area.
Mm-hmm. I think my husband was in Gießen.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the deployments are one thing, but the career side of the house, where was most of your focus when you were stateside?
I was a logistics officer by trade. So, but the vast majority of what I did was more globally focused than it was supporting individual organizations, which most logistics personnel in the military are doing. So even though I was at Fort Bragg, the time that I was there, I was in the special ops community. So everything there was global. When I went to Germany, it was the same thing. It was global. And I taught global logistics studies and ran the officer basic course for the Army's Transportation Corps for 2 years, teaching them, how do you think big? How do you think global? It wasn't about the beans, bullets, Band-Aids, if you will, or the ammunition and fuel supplies to, individual units. The way that my focus was more on the strategic distribution, strategic logistics focus of how do you move tens of thousands of pounds, hundreds of rounds, thousands of vehicles, whether that be by ship, train, airplane. And so that's where I always tended to focus, and the jobs that I ended up, rotating myself around and into. So when I was working, and I use Germany as an example because I was there in 2014 at the height of when Operation Atlantic Resolve was just kicking off in the anti-Russian operations that were going on in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Poland. And so I gained a much greater appreciation there for the need for all the interconnected logistics capabilities that are required to sustain the military, not just the Army, but all the branches. And I took it a step further. When I took my battalion command down in Italy, I took everything from the European logistics headquarters that I worked in for 3 years and put that into play in real time. Because as a battalion commander, I functioned, I had the good fortune of living in Livorno, Italy, just south of Pisa on the Mediterranean Sea. But my office was spread across 150 seaports in 48 separate countries around the Mediterranean Sea, Caspian Sea, Black Sea, and the entire continent of Africa. So when you start talking about the global distribution and big scale, big heavy moves, I was moving 5,000 pieces of equipment across the ocean at a time.
Wow.
Aircraft, trucks, you name it, to support all the different training operations as well as active deployments that we were doing throughout the European theater. We were pushing those back and forth across the Atlantic Ocean. And then when I came back to Leavenworth post-career, then I was training Army units on how to do that. How do you move large-scale pieces? How do you do it the most efficiently? What's your organizational structure need to look like? What training do your people need to get there? And how do you employ them, let alone how do you train them on the fly to ensure that you can execute in that manner? So even though I started, as a base branch transportation corps officer, learning how to drive, big rigs, if you will, and support the warfighter that way, my scope opened incredibly wide at a very young age in my career. And I ended up going from tactical to strategic very, very quickly. Mix in a whole bunch of different opportunities from working with the State Department and then all the combat deployments that came along with that. My exposure, my breadth of experience is very atypical for someone in the logistics career field.
I think we could spend an entire podcast just sort of unpacking everything that's there.
Well, we didn't even touch on 2 years in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba to help stand up that facility.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was an interesting piece as well.
Yeah, but there's a lot of interesting in all of that.
Sounds like that's a passion, because they always say if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, right, Jodi, Vickery? So, yeah, that passion comes through in your talking about your career, talking about your history, talking about at a young age, taking on such responsibility and fulfilling obligations that probably most people couldn't even touch. So thank you for that detail about your military career. I do want to finish with talking about John Hotek for a second, that the honors and awards that you get too, John, from Military Outstanding Volunteer Service Medal for 500 plus hours of volunteer service to local communities around the installations that you just talked about, including Petersburg and Hopewell, Virginia. And then the Order of Samuel Sharp, the Honorable Order of St. Martin, and the Honorable Order of St. Christopher, all about your integrity, moral character, professional competence, just the highest standards. As I was introduced to you by Jake Scarbo, our fantastic mortgage loan officer for Armed Forces Bank, there's a plug for Jake, that he just, again, spoke very highly of you and the work that you do, the work that you've done for our military career, but also what you're doing now with Vector, that aligns very well with Armed Forces Bank and our mission itself that we talked about earlier. So we're going to kind of switch gears and get right into Vector Force Development, talk a little bit more about the company perspective, okay?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And maybe even just starting at a very macro level. I mean, why energy, and what is it about that energy industry, that field, that is appealing to veterans?
I like to say we kind of hide behind the curtain in many respects, but what makes it so appealing to me, and what I use as talking points anytime I go into either a conference or I'm talking with transitioning service members, we put on our uniform for a reason, and that was there was a sense of service in all of us and something that we wanted to move towards. There was a sense of purpose. We were part of something bigger than ourselves. Well, as they're transitioning and we're getting out, we're looking for something else to fill that void, when we take that uniform off. So I looked at the energy industry when this opportunity was presented to me, and I really had not thought much about it at all as I was getting out. I figured I'd end up transitioning into a logistics, organization and doing what I'd done for the past 24 years. But then this gave me something to hang my hat on, because at the end of the day, if you think about it, and the reason I say that we're the people behind the curtain, we're keeping your lights on, we're keeping your heat on, we're keeping your AC in the summertime, your natural gas in the wintertime, and the broadband internet that we're talking on right now. So that gave me a sense of purpose. It gave me the ability to be part of something bigger than myself all over again and protect our national security from within. As a civilian, I'm just not wearing a uniform this time. So it gives me passion and motivation every day. It gives me a reason to lace up my shoes and go, I want to go to work today. I want to do this because I see the bigger picture that I'm contributing towards. So people don't look at our industry as exciting sometimes. They think of it as, oh, that's hard work, it's tough. And I'm not going to lie, it is hard work and it is tough. But we can hang up our hat at the end of the night, tuck ourselves in bed, kiss our children and our spouses goodnight, and rest our heads knowing, you know what, I'm going to make a difference tomorrow, and I'm going to make a difference the day after that, and every day going forward, because we keep the nation going.
I love that. And that's been such we've talked to a lot of people that have worn the uniform over the course of the podcast that we've recorded. And that's such a common theme, that when you get out, you haven't lost that need to have a sense of purpose and a sense of mission, and that the values haven't changed. I mean, you're just wearing a different set of clothes every day, right? So it's very, I think it's outstanding that you found a way differently to give back and serve the community.
But yet there's still a sense of a safety and a security about what he does every single day and says, I have purpose. And
no, absolutely. That's
go ahead, John.
I was going to say, it's just that sense of motivation. You have to find something to drive you. And for me, this industry gave me that. And, I enjoy it, and I will continue to enjoy it. I'm part of an incredible team.
John, let's talk about more specifically about job opportunities or career fields that exist at Vector for our audience and for those that share the podcast with people within their circles of influence. Talk a little bit about what's available now at Vector, or what has been available, or what could be available in the future.
Well, I mean, I'll speak to both Vector and the industry writ large, because for all intents and purposes, everything is intertwined. And in a lot of industries where, we'll use automotive industry, for example, where they're competing for the design engineers to build the next Tesla or the next Audi. And they're very competitive in how they compete for people. The energy industry is almost one big family. Yes, we compete against each other, but we share our resources and we share our people more so than a lot of other industries are used to. So that's why I say, I want to talk to Vector and I want to speak to the energy, the industry writ large. But most people look at the energy industry and they think, it's only construction operations. By default, you see linesmen working on the street after a storm, or you see the bucket trucks going down I-35 after work, heading south in response to a storm in Louisiana. And people automatically default and go, those are the energy jobs. Those are the only things that are available. But that is not the case. We have IT, we have engineering, we've got program and project management. We need electrical engineers, out to wazoo across the entire United States. We need finance, HR, legal, etc. You name it, we have it. But the problem is again, there's a stereotype that our career fields or our industry is limited to just the folks, the visuals that you automatically perceive, when you see folks, working on the street or working on a light pole or whatever else. But if you name it, we have it in one way, shape, or form. Within Vector, a lot of the services that we provide are mostly skilled labor, or craft labor, as we prefer to call it, which is mostly field operations, short of my division, which is Vector Talent Solutions, which is mostly recruiting and staffing. So we have the, the field ops piece, and then we do have our soft skills and back office support with finance and HR. But when you start getting into some of our larger partners here in the Kansas City area or even nationally, you start cracking into the much larger opportunities across every facet that you can imagine to support those greater enterprises.
Well said.
And I can kind of start to piece together the answer to my next question just based on the background that you shared about the different roles that you filled, but maybe put a finer point on it for our audience and talk about the military skill sets that either helped you as you transition from military to the civilian workforce in this field, or that you have seen help others that you have brought into Vector, help them be successful through your recruiting efforts, maybe.
Yeah. The biggest issue or the biggest concern that I had coming in was, how do I transition the way that I speak and the way that I communicate? And within the military, everything is very set, it's very structured. And it's not that you're being overly directorial in your actions, but there is kind of an authoritarian tone that gets used more often than not. So I focused a lot on my soft skills, my interpersonal communications, and I was blessed with multiple opportunities through my career to build on those and to help me learn the art of relationship building and organizing, strategizing the construction of organizations and how best to push them forward. So those are the ones that I relied on for my particular role in what I do within Vector. But then, what I see coming from, the transitioning service members, coming into the energy field or energy and utilities, just the sheer fact that they can mold into a team very quickly with that understanding of what teamwork really is, the work ethic that they bring to the table, and combine that with discipline and adherence to risk management practices and the overall attention to detail that they have regarding what we do on a daily basis. Because inherently our industry can be dangerous, and it is dangerous in some respects because sometimes our folks are touching natural gas lines live wires and other things. We call it sticky, stuff that kills you. So when you have that service member that's transitioning and coming over, the fact that they have worked in high stress, potentially dangerous environments and have had to pay attention, to minuscule details that are critically important. When you transition them into this environment where we do have stuff that will kill you as well, they just seem to naturally graft to the safety protocols and just the SOPs or standard operating procedures that we have in place to facilitate a safe and efficient workspace. So those are the two, facets that I would say where I'm coming from an interpersonal standpoint, and then what we are looking for new teammates that are coming into the industry.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I'll take that probably another layer downward, but how does somebody get started if they are interested in pursuing opportunities in that field, whether it's energy, whether it's utilities, whether it's infrastructure, construction? Somebody may see somebody in their life that's in that field, or they studied it at school or had an interest in it. What's the jumping off point as far as what do they do if they're interested in those sectors?
Yeah, there are several opportunities. And I will say this is something that the industry as a whole has been hyper-focused on for the past several years, because the vast majority of our workforce is starting to age out in the next 15 years. And we don't have the backfill that we need to maintain the current level of support across the United States. So there's an active push across the industry to get young people interested, folks that are looking for second position, second jobs or second careers interested. There's a lot of partnerships that are going on right now with vocational programs, with junior colleges or community colleges. A lot of individual organizations, and some of our partners are doing this, are offering fellowships, not just for high school and college students, but also adults that are looking to start a second career, to give them some touch points as well as some OJT or on-the-job training in the industry to see if it's something that appeals to them. Because you'll really be surprised what's out there in terms of opportunity. And then there's organizations such as the Edison Electric Institute, or EEI. They have some career forward programs that are looking to bring folks in, a lot of educational components there, as well as where to go to get training in your state. The Center for Energy Workforce Development is another phenomenal asset that people can use. And they've kind of broken it down as well. CEWD looks at the industry holistically from a civilian standpoint, but then they've also broken it down and they've created a separate manner through which, or pipeline through which military personnel can get into the industry. And that's called Troops to Energy, where they've broken out every single MOS across the different services or military occupational specialty and matched it to the positions that are the closest match within the energy industry, and then are providing touch points for how to go from being a linesman in the military to a linesman in commercial practice with one of our energy partners. So if, then the worst case, quite honestly, if anybody is interested, they can call me, they can reach out to my team. That's a shameless plug. I will put that out there for the BTS team. But we do an awful lot of that where folks will call us because they know we do a lot of recruiting and staffing for our energy partners. And we'll refer them to organizations that are either providing education, providing free training, or some of our partners that are offering some of these fellowships and internships, just to get people into the pipeline and scratch that itch and see if it's something that appeals to them.
I love the idea of that Troops to Energy, where it's helping them figure out from what they did to how that applies, especially if it's not just on the surface obvious, if it takes a couple of leaps of logic to get there, helping them create that map from their military occupation to the civilian role.
In the team that put the CEWD Troops to Energy program together, I contributed a little bit, but there were dozens of veterans that are in the space across the United States, and we all took a look at it from our different lenses. Obviously I was looking at logistics positions. We had other operational individuals looking at it from their positions, trying to get true experienced eyes on each one of the positions available, and then mirroring them up as closely as possible. So it wasn't individuals in a vacuum. There was a lot of dedicated time and effort with, I'd say, probably close to 100 people across the United States working to put that together so that we could provide the best product to those individuals looking to transition from the service.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a great roadmap.
Do you remember earlier when you said when you were reading his bio and you thought something might not be true in there, right? I don't think John
I'm pretty sure it's all true. I was joking.
Oh, I don't think John, though, is just part of Vector Talent Services, right? It sounds like you're the brand ambassador for Vector. So you do a magnificent job showcasing the depth and breadth of your organization to our audience. So I appreciate you going beyond your job description to really talk up your organization.
Oh,
That's
no worries, because it's like I
great
said,
pride. Yeah.
it's not about just Vector. We are an interconnected industry in which, competitors work with each other to get to the end goal. And that's, like I said, keeping the lights on, keeping the gas going, and keeping the broadband pumping. So there's really, even though we're all competitors, it's a very friendly industry to some degrees. So I'm happy to promote it because I believe in it. I think we're doing good things for God, country, and the people of the United States.
By the way, for our audience benefit, when he said friendly, he used air quotes. Did you see that? Did you see that?
I think he meant it though.
I know.
So Tom's going to rewrite your profile, is I think what he
He's
just said, and add a bunch of stuff to it.
I get it. Yeah.
Add a bunch of stuff to it and send it back to you. But yes. No, and he hit on very key points at my house. So the Wi-Fi for my children is very important. And they never use the heat, but they do use the AC even in the wintertime. So all important things. Yeah. So I want to talk about Vector and how you stay connected with the community too, because I think you have to do that to tap into the veteran workforce and do the recruiting that you're talking about. So how does Vector approach staying integrated with the veteran community as a whole, with the municipalities and the locations that you're physically in and are serving? How do you go about that?
Well, from a community standpoint, I will say up front, our employees are committed to the individual communities that they serve in. I'll use one of our teams in Toledo, for example, happened to be conducting some work outside of a local elementary school, and they had to go into the school to give them notice that they were going to be working outside the school. And one of the teachers came out and said, well, would you be willing to show these kids what you do? Well, that crew of 4 turned that one day of show and tell into an ongoing relationship with the students, the faculty, and the parents of that elementary school. They've taken it so far now that they're sponsoring some of their basketball tournaments. They're sponsoring their baseball
Very
tournament.
cool.
They raised money for the baseball team to be able to go to one of their travel tournaments. And that's just an example of how we commit to the community. And it wasn't something that we said, you will do this. That's just the nature of our employees and what we hope, and I don't want to say expect, but what we hope they will do based on the example that we've set as an organization. That's one macro, micro example of some of the things that we do. From the field operations standpoint, because we're spread out across over 20 states right now, we allow our field operations teams to engage in local charities, do school sponsorships, as I mentioned, and things of that nature in their local areas. So the teams in Charlotte will commit to certain things in Charlotte. The teams in Detroit obviously will commit to the things of their liking. At the corporate level, from a community involvement standpoint, we are heavily involved with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. We're an active sponsor of the Light the Night campaign for blood cancer and leukemia research. And that is something that we are very, very adamant about supporting. We're one of the premier sponsors in the city of Seattle because that's our CEO lives in that area. But we're also starting to push that out across all of our major hubs across the United States. That's just on the civilian or local level. But then when we start getting into staying connected with the veteran community, we are actively engaged with an organization called Team Red, White, and Blue. We have members of our organization from the Vector family that are running the Old Glory Relay coming up here in a few weeks that runs, and don't quote me on the mileage. I can't remember how far it is, but it's from New York City all the way to Chicago, I believe, and they're running the American flag. And they do that. So we've got members that are going to be running alongside of disabled veterans, other veterans, because Team RWV is all about veteran wellness and health and action and getting out there, staying active, getting together, and then getting together to be able to work together, to stay mentally active, healthy, physically active, and engaging with each other. It's communal therapy in many respects. It's how the organization started, but it has grown into so much more. And it does some significant outreach from a mental health awareness standpoint with our veteran community, as well as our physically disabled veteran community as well. In August of this year, our CEO, our CFO, and presidents of 2 organizations that we are partnered with, and then some senior members of our vendors that we utilize are summiting Mount Rainier in the state of Washington. It's an 8-day expedition, but they're doing it in support of both Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and Team Red, White, and Blue. So they're raising funds to do that, as well as raising awareness for both those organizations. And then we do other localized veteran engagements and activities. I'm active here in the Kansas City area in a few different veterans groups and initiatives. And I know folks, we've got a member down in Charleston, South Carolina, who's active down there. And we stay tied in, not just through our groups such as, the VFW, the VA, the American Legion, but also for those of us that still have access to the military facilities. I'm very active on Fort Leavenworth. I'm engaged with the population there. I'm still fortunate enough to have friends that are still serving up there. So I get back and forth, but I stay tied into the news that's going on up there, what's current in the military community, what's going on with military families, let alone what's going on with military transitionees or transitioning service members. What are their challenges and how can we best help facilitate a smoother transition for them on the outside? We're advantaged in that respect because we have such a high veteran population within our organization, not just at the leadership level, but throughout our teams, so that we can plug into so many different levels to stay tuned into both the communities in which we're serving, as well as the veteran community and the veteran population that we have a penchant for, taking care of.
I love that you do things at the corporate level, but I wrote down the word freedom when you were talking about the localized support that they give. You're giving them flexibility and freedom to do things that make sense in their community and trusting them because they're all like-minded and,
Absolutely. It's all about, and Jake can probably attest to this, it's all about trust and empowerment with our team. Yep. We are a heavily remote and dispersed organization. So without that trust and empowerment, we would be futile. And in doing that, we have been able to grow at an exponential rate because we believe in each other. We have an implicit amount of trust in each other to just go out and get things done as long as they're in the best interest of the organization.
That comes through loud and clear.
Yeah, you talked about, I'll throw another comment in there. You talked about being in the know, what's facing our military families. And Jodi mentioned all the great guests we've had on these podcasts talking about food insecurity or veteran homelessness or behavioral or mental health issues and leadership issues, just confidence and, the suicide rates, all those conversations come up in our podcast. But then you tackle the career transitioning side too, and embedding yourselves in the communities that you serve, that there's no way you're not going to know what's going on because you got boots on the ground, seeing what's right in front of you and then listening to others.
It definitely helps, to have individuals at every level, across a myriad of different organizations. But that's who we are at our core. And that was the initial impetus to create, or catalyst to create Vector as an organization. The first Vector company was to provide meaningful career opportunities for the nation's veterans. And when we hearken back to that, that's the core of what we continue to do. And so in order to do that, we have to stay tied in. It's not a we'd like to, it's a we must, if we want to live true to our motto, in our foundational roots.
Shifting gears, we're going to talk about Operation Homeward. Do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely.
Why is it?
He smiled as soon as you said it. So I'm thinking he wants to talk about it.
And why is it important? Let's talk about that.
We have 7 core values within the organization. One of those is family. And to me, we're committed not just to our employees, but their families as well. So as we were looking at ways to improve our employee experience, our benefits, the things that we provide that keep, it all goes back to retention, but how do you keep an employee happy? Because if you keep an employee happy, you pay them well, you take care of them, but more importantly, you take care of their family. They're going to stay because they realize that you're loyal to the whole unit, not just them as an individual. And this goes to treating people as people and not things. So as we were looking at creating something different, we wanted something that was unique, that truly helped the employees, through what many consider to be a painful process. Everyone that I know that has worked with Jake and the team at Armed Forces Bank has said, wow, this is easy. This is good. They've helped us along. And that's what we wanted to be able to give to our employees, because there are so many different benefits that a company can provide to people. We wanted something different. We wanted something that truly would resonate and something that was unique that a lot of other people or a lot of other organizations don't offer. Because so that we could separate ourselves, from, even though I say we're one big happy family, from our competitors, because that people bucket is pretty small these days. So when Jake and team provided this opportunity, it was the perfect partnership that combines education, resources, exceptional customer relations, and it created a productive and meaningful process that we at the leadership level said, well, this is a no-brainer. Not only is the organization phenomenal, but the people that are backing it and supporting it are incredible. And they have the same level of commitment to our employees that we do. And they're not even part of our company. So when that all came to fruition and Jake contacted us and we started having those conversations and laid it on the table, for me, it was a no-brainer. For our CEO, it was a no-brainer. But we have kept, in the team there at Armed Forces Bank has done such an exceptional job at keeping people at the forefront of this and making it less transactional and more relational. That truly was the real push, and why I smile when you mention the name of the program, because it really is. It's a great concept. It does incredible things. And at the end of the day, we're not just taking care of an employee, we're taking care of the entire family. Because if you keep that family happy, you're going to keep the employee happy. They're not going to be focused on other things when they're at work. They're going to be focused on work. And like I said earlier, we do stuff that'll kill you. We want them focused. We want them with their head in the game. We don't want them worried about, this horrible or difficult mortgage process that they're going through. We're trusting that Jake and team and the crew there at Armed Forces Bank is going to wrap their arm around them, give them a hug, bring them into the fold. And they don't have to stress, so that they're not worried at work. That improves their efficiency, that it maintains the safety of not just them, their crew, but the entire community that they're working in.
It's sort of part of the DoD readiness mantra too, right? Of financial readiness and emotional readiness, family readiness, all those things about readiness. So let's make it easy for our service men and women, because they have a hard job. And if Jake is a solution to make family a better family because of the benefit that you're offering, then that's awesome. And I'll tell you what, we could do a podcast just on the 7 core values of Vector. If that was just one of them,
yeah, I'd be happy to come back.
I want to know what the other 6, I guess I have to go to the website and get the other 6 core values, don't I? All right.
That's your homework assignment, Tom. And I would say that you said that Jake and team have kind of wrapped themselves around your employees as if they were part of the organization. Don't forget that Tom has made himself part of your organization.
It's we, it's us, it's our.
Yes, Tom has invited himself to be a Vector employee. So let's not forget that. Yes. I do want to close loop on one thing related to the recruitment piece of what you're doing. And it's kind of near and dear to my heart. My husband was a military recruiter at the end of his career. And he's still sort of in that space now that he has exited. And so I still see how that works and some of the things that play into that and hear his stories. But what is it that Vector does that's unique in that space that causes veterans to approach you and embrace what Vector's doing differently? I think some of it's what we've already talked about in programs like Operation Homeward, of course. But are there any other things that you'd add that cause your recruiting of veterans particularly to be different or more engaging for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, it starts with just within the BTS or the Vector Talent Solutions team, 30% of my team is veterans. So we walk the walk, we talk it. We actually speak Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marine. And so that initially, when we make that initial contact call, reach out to a transitioning service member or a veteran themselves, we automatically have street credibility. We can talk, the language of each one of those, services. But then we also help rewrite and tailor resumes. We're not just there to say, hey, we have a job for you. Especially from a veteran community and in the transitioning service members, if we think that they're a good match after our conversations, we will help them rewrite, tailor their resume to present to that hiring manager, whether it be internal to Vector or external to Vector. And that comes to our approach and how we are much more active than we are passive in our approach. We outwardly look, we are constantly on the hunt looking for individuals that would be a good fit, for all the different roles that we have available. We don't wait for them to come to us. We don't use the post on the website and pray method.
Right.
And we take an active approach at building the relationships with these individuals. So, truth be told, you're not always going to be able to place every single individual into every single opportunity. But since we have those individuals that can reach out and build that relationship with potential candidate, they'll reach out, they'll have that conversation, and it might be, hey, I'm sorry, Sarah, we don't have an opportunity for you right now, or the hiring manager passed, but I'm going to call you back in 3 months. I'm going to call you back in 6 months if you're still looking. And, we'll revisit what you're looking for, or if I see something that comes up, we're going to come back to you. And a lot of the times when we do that, they're like, when we call them 3-4 months later, they're like, oh, you are kidding.
Right.
Like, no, we're not joking about that. We want to work with you and we want to help you. That's our commitment to you. So it's that we take the active approach, we speak the language, we work at building the relationships with the individual candidates, utilizing those personnel that have the backgrounds and or direct branch affiliation with the candidates that we're working with. But that's on the individual level. What we've also done is we partnered with the U.S. Department of Labor, and we're part of what's called the Employment Navigator Partnership Program, which is now global on all DoD installations. They have a few more to go, but the global approach has been executed. And what that allows us to do now is through our partnership with the DOL and what they call the employment navigators that are at the DoD installations, we have the ability to advertise our opportunities through the navigators to separating service members now up to 2 years in advance of their separation, because you can register for retirement. If John Hotek wants to come back to Kansas City and I'm interested in construction or I'm interested in HR, I can have that conversation with the navigator. They're going to go into the system. They're going to see the companies that match. They're going to put me directly in contact with that candidate. And me or a member of our team can then start building that relationship with an individual up to 2 years in advance of their separation. That is huge, not just for the transitioning service member, but for organizations like ours, because we can build a relationship. We can talk about all the different opportunities. We have the opportunity to guide them for, independent training and other things that they might need to do if it's a very specific job they're looking at doing within our industry before they even get out, and potentially have a job waiting for them or created for them before they separate from service. And then we work with the VA's placement centers across the United States and provide search capability for them to place their candidates. We had an individual about 6 weeks ago that approached a placement center in California, wanted to get back to Tennessee, but they couldn't find anything for them. So they come to us and say, hey, what do you have within your scope in Tennessee? Well, 6 days later, that individual was hired with a relocation package and moved to Tennessee to work in broadband.
That's awesome.
So, we've reached out to those different organizations and put those partnerships in place because we realize we don't have exponential reach. But when we combine efforts with organizations like the DOL and the VA, we're able to expand our reach and the number of candidates and veterans that we can touch. Because again, it's all about the relationship and demonstrating that we truly care. We don't ever want anyone to say that we don't practice what we preach. So we're always looking for ways to demonstrate our commitment, demonstrate our level of care, give back to, obviously our employees, the communities that we serve, and the veterans and their families that are looking for career opportunities in our industry.
That's such a great approach, and I think it will no doubt be repaid tenfold. I mean, that's how the world works, in my opinion.
We're going to do a podcast series with Victor.
Yes.
So as we wind down the conversation, John, is there anything else you want to share with our audience that may not have been covered? Now, full disclosure, these questions were fantastic. I'm going to take credit for them, even though John wrote them for me. But they are
shocking that you would take credit for them.
Sorry.
As a Vector employee, of course.
Yeah.
But your website address is www.vectorforcedevelopment.com, vectorforcedevelopment.com.
That's correct.
There was one thing I was going to throw out that was off script.
Also
Go
shocking.
ahead, imagine that.
Shocking.
So that the designation that you have, right, service disabled veteran-owned business, and I think you should be proud of that. And you put the designation out there on your website. Is that in 30 seconds? What does that designation mean to the organization, and why is it important to get that out there?
Twofold. One, it's part of our core. in who we are. We were founded by a disabled veteran. We are committed to the veteran community and their families. So we take a lot of pride in that, especially, for anyone that's ever worn the uniform. You can take the uniform off, but it's always still going to be part of you. And, it's part of who we are at our baseline as a corporation and within our mentality and our corporate culture. But from an overall business standpoint, it's critical for us in utilities and energy because we receive and are involved in contracts that require a significant amount of diverse spend, both at the state, federal, and even at private levels. And within those contracts, there are diversity requirements that say, company X, you must spend 15, 20, in some cases, like in California, up to 40+% of your contractors or subcontractors, in our case, must be from a minority business enterprise. And that could be minority-owned business, woman-owned business, LGBTQ business, disabled veteran business, so on and so forth. So we then, we provide our services to help our customers, leverage diversity spend, being able to give back to a business like, a smaller business like ours as it's continuing to grow so that they can meet their diversity goals, when it comes to the receipt of federal and state and local infrastructure dollars. But more than the diverse spend that we provide, I hearken back to, we are veterans at our core. It's who we are. It's why we're in the industry that we are a part of, because it gives us something, gives us purpose, gives us motivation, gives us a way to, as I said at the beginning, help support the national infrastructure of the United States and continue service, even though we're no longer in uniform.
He's used "this is who we are" a lot, hasn't he?
I know. He might secretly be an Armed Forces Bank employee.
I know. He's going to start wearing that shirt now that says "this is who we are," and he's going to call it his own, right?
I'll trade the name tag. I'll get you a Vector one if I get an Armed Forces Bank one. How about that?
That's a deal. Jake's gonna track down the logistics of how to get that to you.
It's like employee swap. It's going to be a new TV show.
We can do that.
I love it.
I already worked there.
I'll gladly send Tom your way for at least 60 days.
Well, hey, Tom, if you ever want to come out and experience what we do, I've facilitated ride-alongs with our teams before, just to get to touch and feel and see what our organization does, to meet the individuals, not just me, the talking head. I'm more than happy to open that up to you or anyone else at Armed Forces Bank who'd be interested in just getting a peek behind the curtain.
As long as Tom's not near anything that's like dangerous or...
But remember, I learned a new thing now. It's called sticky, right? Stuff that'll kill you.
Tom is not allowed to be near anything sticky.
Hey, we'll put him in a bubble. And
yes, one of those big ones, and then just roll him down a hill. Take him up to Mount Rainier with your CEO and roll him down the hill. Or mountain.
I was thinking about Mount Rainier, and I was like, we walked up this one flight of stairs. I was tired, right? Yeah,
I'm thinking we might need to train a little bit if we're going to go on a mountain.
Is it time for our military minute?
It is time. So I hope you can take just another moment with us because we like to play a game. I think we like to play a game.
I think we're the only two that like to play this game.
We rather enjoy it. It's called Military Minute, and the first question is from our last podcast, and you are welcome to answer it if you are so inclined and think you might know the answer. It was a 2-part question. And
but full disclosure, he's not a sports guy.
Yeah, so you don't have to answer.
But he might know golf.
But you could wager a guess, and we could play hot or cold, or So last podcast question was: how many rounds of golf did Woodrow Wilson play during his 8-year term, and what color did he paint his golf balls so he could play in the winter?
Wow.
Those are great questions, aren't they?
This is how weird Tom is. These are Tom questions. This gives you an insight into the brain of Tom.
Do you have a guess, John?
No clue. None whatsoever.
We don't either, but we're going to give you a made-up answer
Tom may have made up the answer. So Woodrow Wilson played 1,200
That's 1,200
rounds of golf.
Yeah,
multiply that times 18. Math is hard, so I'm not going to do that on the fly, but that's a lot of golf. And he painted his golf balls black so he could play in the winter, presumably in the snow. I think red might have been just fine too, but black was the color.
If it's like winter in Florida or something, it's probably use white, right?
And so, moving on. This week's Military Minute takes us to a question about transitioning from the military to the civilian world. So we are going to ask you not to answer this one. It's highly probable that you may know the answer, but this one is for our audience. So everybody just don't answer. How many people transition from the military each year? It's a 1-part question. You've been a fan of the combo question the last few episodes.
And it's also just a
It's just a number,
right?
Just a number.
Yeah,
How
it's
many
just a
people transition from the military to the civilian world each year?
John Hotek, don't answer.
And so if you think you know the answer, when this podcast drops, feel free to comment your best guess enabled by Google or whatever your source of information is. And if you are correct, you will be entered in a drawing to win $50 for you or $50 for a charity of your choice. And if you were correct in guessing 1,200 rounds of golf and a black golf ball, check our social media.
Yeah.
Well, maybe in that order. Check our social media for your name to see if you were the one that was selected to win $50 for you and $50 for a charity of your choice.
We really have to thank John for participating today. He did a fantastic job.
He did. It was wonderful to have you.
No, it was a pleasure to be here.
Oh, you did fantastic, and it was our honor to have you on the podcast today.
All right, if you enjoyed today's episode as much as Jodi Vickery and Jake Scarborough and John Hotek, go out to afbank.com and subscribe to the show. Also, make sure to rate us. Leave us a comment on your favorite podcast platform. Could be Apple Podcasts, could be Spotify, or it could be YouTube. Again, well done, John Hotek.
Thank you so much.
For a great job. And thank you for...
My pleasure.
All right, take care, John Hotek. Thanks very much, Jake.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
You as well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Copyright Armed Forces Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. All non-Armed Forces Bank-owned apps, websites, company names, and product names are trademarks or registered trademarks of their respective owners. Their mention does not imply any affiliation with or endorsement by Armed Forces Bank of them or their products and services. They are merely used as examples of the many available apps, companies, and websites that offer similar services. Before using any app or website, you should carefully review the terms of use, data collection, and privacy policy. Apps may have an initial cost or in-application purchase features. This information is general in nature and is not intended to be legal, tax, or financial advice. Although Armed Forces Bank believes this information to be accurate, it cannot ensure that it could change. Statements or opinions of individuals referenced herein are their own, not Armed Forces Bank. Consult an appropriate professional concerning your specific situation and respective governing bodies for applicable laws, such as irs.gov for current tax law. Armed Forces Bank, the Armed Forces Bank logo, and the Militarily Speaking logo are registered trademarks of Armed Forces Bank.